We're delighted today to be at Wirral Mind with Sarah Hatter, who's going to tell us a little bit about Wirral Mind and what they do here.
First and foremost, we're a local mental health charity and we're affiliated to National Mind. So we're a local mind association. And what we do is we develop our services in response to any unmet needs within our community. So it's really looking at the local picture of what people are wanting, anybody in any form of distress, and support them in remaining as mentally well as they can.
Could you tell us what's the main service you offer in this building?
The main service really, well there's two main services. We have the drop-in downstairs and that's where people can come along, and anybody who's feeling isolated or who just wants to be with other people, just to come in, either take one of the activities. You have things like walking group, arts and crafts group, we have a cookery club. It's about people coming together, working together, supporting each other. Being in a place where there's no judgment, so people can come into the drop-in centre. It's independent of statutory services. They can come in, sign in, they're not worried about going through any sort of medical assessments, anything like that, and relax in that environment. And for instance, today we've got a course going on in listening skills, developing deeper listening skills, because most people in distress just want to be heard. We're in central Birkenhead, 90 to 92 Chester Street, which is the top of Market Street, a very well-known street. Everyone has mental health needs. So, and at different times we all function better sometimes and don't function so well at others. So when anyone comes in here, if they need help and support, and with carers and supporters, invariably they will have mental health needs that they need, because they're giving so much to other people and they're under so many sort of competing demands. Their own self-care often lacks, and we're all about here focusing on the self, not being selfish but being self-aware and taking that self-care, and that's our first starting point, and valuing yourself, feeling...
Yeah, and I suppose if you are a carer or a supporter of someone who has got mental health issues, you need to stay strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You need to stay strong for yourself, for the person who you're supporting, and for the networks around that person. It's carers, they're sort of like this hidden workforce at the moment, and you know, without them I don't know what the country would do, to be honest. You just think about the millions and millions, possibly billions of pounds that they'd have to spend on people's care if they didn't have people, carers. But not all carers choose to do it. Some carers just find themselves in that position through family connections. Not that they don't want to do it, but they've just found themselves within that role.
There's a lot of young people, isn't there, children actually looking after, caring for parents and that with mental health problems. Do you find that a lot? We
do find that a lot, and there's actually a local organisation, Bernardo's, who used to run groups for children and for parents of children who care for them as well, to help those parents whose children were caring cope with their issues around sort of that guilt that they feel. But unfortunately there are a lot of young people at the moment caring for people with mental health needs or other physical illnesses as well.
And they do say that 1 in 3 of us have got some kind of mental health issue, and yet there's still a huge stigma. Do you still find that in this day and age?
Undoubtedly the stigma there, and traditionally through history mental health has been stigmatised, and so the people within that fall into that group of having mental health problems, which, like you've quite rightly said with the statistics, you say 1 in 3. I think 1 in 4 is bandied about a lot as well, but realistically it's more like 1 in 3. If you think there's sort of 3 of us here sitting together chatting, if it's not me, it's not you, who else is it? So there is no us and them. We could at any point, we don't know what life's going to throw at us, you know, how our experiences are going to change, the everyday challenges of life, plus any traumatic event, which hopefully, you know, we hope not to happen, but it does. There's so many people at any given time experiencing mental health problems. Because of that, I think if people are more knowledgeable and understand that we all have mental health needs and it could affect any of us at any time, and it probably does, but people don't recognise it. We get people struggling and experiencing extreme anxiety or feeling really overwhelmed and sad, who are actually depressed, and they don't recognise they've got a mental health problem, actually don't want to accept that they have. The more we understand and know about mental health and accept that it's just the same as physical health, that sometimes we're healthier than others, and that it can affect any of us, the more we can break down and tackle that stigma that is there.
You can't put a plaster on it, so people sort of think, oh no, you know, I can't admit this. It somehow can be seen as a sign of weakness if you admit that you've got mental health issues.
What most people need are mental health problems. Obviously you've got the medical view and the medical side of things. What you can give people, it's common sense really, time, reassurance, practical strategies, a bit of time out maybe, or support around positive people. A lot of people are fearful around mental health, and it's about, look, what would you need if you were in distress? What would mean something to you? Someone making you a hot cup of tea, giving you half an hour really good attention, listening to you non-judgmentally.
Is there any particular signs that, say, a parent would be looking for in a child? Because at the moment we've been hearing about a lot of self-harm in young people. Is there any particular signs that you'd look for, any parent should look for?
We don't deal specifically with children. This charity deals with adults 18 plus. General signs of someone with a mental health problem. You could look for a change in behaviour, knowing what's normal for that person and what's not normal. And I think when you're looking at adolescents and young people, their emotions can change anyway because they're in a stage of transition, aren't they? So it can be very difficult for people because changes in behaviour, they may think, oh well, that's just their age. But it's important if you notice there's a change, if someone's becoming more withdrawn, not socialising as much, withdrawing, spend lots of time alone in the bedroom. I know with the social media now, people are on that a lot. Obviously there's the physical signs. If they're wearing different types of clothes, it might be they're trying to cover up signs. If they've cut themselves, for instance, they might try and cover that, so they might be wearing long jumpers when it's summer, something that's unusual behaviour.
So where would you signpost a young person?
Well, we tend to work with people, probably like families or carers who come to us who are concerned about a young person, so we wouldn't necessarily come into contact with young people. We would try to encourage them first and foremost to speak to their caregivers or parents, to open up and to let them know. If they didn't want to do that, if they felt that they couldn't, there are certain websites online where you can go and get some help from. I have got those available for you, can have a look for you. Brilliant. The CAMS service, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, is young people might get referred into if they've gone through their GP. If they're in school and they can find one member of staff maybe who they trust, they might have somebody who's a designated member of staff who they speak to with problems, might be a tutor or someone like that. It might not necessarily be, they might not have that good a relationship with that person. Hopefully they would have. The most important thing is they speak to someone they trust, an adult
maybe
that they
trust. Maybe a GP or someone.
Yeah, the GP. They might not want to go to the GP because they might not want their parents to know. First and foremost, we'd encourage them to share with their families, but we understand that if someone's so distressed and they're resorting to a point where they want to cope through self-harm, they might find it difficult to express that to their parents because they may not understand the reasons why they do. Down the GP route would be a very good starting point for anyone to
and just to generally not bottling in to talk to someone. Like you say, if it's not a teacher, a learning mentor, or just
sometimes it can just be disclosing to another friend who you trust, and that friend that might then maybe tell their parents, who might get in touch with school, and as long as it's handled in a sensitive way and the child or the young person doesn't feel betrayed in any way, because that's really important. So it's very important to stress somebody who you trust, someone who you know cares about you.
And you do outreach work here, and educational work. Is that, do you go into local schools?
We have done, and we do occasionally within our sort of budget allowing, but we always, whenever we go into schools, we feel that the work is so necessary because we liaise with the teachers beforehand before we go in, and they often tell us stories of what's being presented to them, what's been disclosed. A lot of self-harm we hear about all the time, and also students who are presenting who are saying their family members are struggling with mental health problems.
Fantastic work that you do, I've got to say. How are you funded?
All sorts of different funding streams.
Like everybody.
We're constantly sort of having to tender really for funding. We have some council funding from different streams. We also, the training department is funded by the Big Lottery. We always say as a staff team as well, we're very, very privileged to be doing this work, and when we go home, and I feel incredibly lucky to be working in such an environment, supported by peers, by the people we work with, people we work in partnership with, and the service users ourselves. To go home and feel better for coming work is great.
Because you care and you're doing a good job.
Going back to before, we were talking about the stigma, because a lot of people with mental health problems internalise stigma, and that's historical. I know you've done some work around the history of mental health. We're still sort of living with the fallout from those that those things that created the stigma. So we're trying to sort of work with that. And the nice thing about here, and I think the thing which is helpful to the service users to come in, is there's no us and them. Just like we say there's no us and them with mental health, it can happen to any of us. We all have mental health needs. When they come here, we don't have staff toilets, we don't have staff uniforms, we don't wear badges. When we have social events, the staff will sit with the service users. When they go on holiday, they'll share accommodation with service users. There is really no us and them. We work closely with programmes that help support people with substance misuse. My personal viewpoint is a bit of a chicken and egg. Sometimes it's quite hard to know, because sometimes people are using substances, alcohol or drugs, to actually as a coping mechanism to deal with their problems, to get through their problems, to suppress their problems, to really detach from reality, everyday living, to knock the edges off the pain that they're experiencing. They then become dependent and fall into the lifestyle and then develop associated problems, and then that will impact on the mental health. And it's a bit of a spiral, because you can get many associated problems like debt, homelessness, loss of employment. It's a bit of a vicious cycle.
You wouldn't know which came first.
No, there are different perspectives. Some people are quite clear-cut. Personally, just from my experience, sometimes it's really hard to tell. And do you know what? It really doesn't matter, because people might be struggling so much with their mental health that they're using substance, or it might be the other way around. Somebody's got a physical dependency on it, and that physical dependency has then resulted in those lifestyle changes which are negative, impacted negatively on the physical or the lifestyle, and then they develop mental health problems. So I see the two as intertwined.
Yeah. So you can develop mental health problems by taking drugs, and at the same time,
well, do you reckon it's the green
might
stuff,
take
isn't it now?
Yeah,
Marijuana with the
because you've got
chemicals.
mental health.
Yeah.
Mental health
There is
problems.
definitely, there's a link, when you look at like the marijuana and things like that with young people as well. There has been research shown that it can definitely trigger mental health episodes in people, and deteriorate mental health in people. In fact, with young people who are smoking substances or taking substances in any other ways, their mental health invariably will take a dip. And there's lots of research done, and people can be predisposed to mental health problems as well, which may never develop, but then when they've dabbled in drugs, that can trigger them off.
Yeah.
But they might have a genetic disposition to it.
Yeah.
And also the lifestyle changes. It's not just, it can be the actual drugs that can induce sort of mental health problems, but it can be the associated lifestyle changes that come from taking drugs that can develop mental health problems as well.